Hello and welcome to episode 164 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm pissed off. This week, find out why.
Honda unveils a new electric vehicle called the, all right, let me check this, the ENY1. Added a Honda spokesperson, please don't buy this car, we're begging you.
A company has built a robot to build solar farms. Why are we wasting robots on solar farms when we could use them at the North Albert Street McDonald's, Brian, where humans always get my order wrong? Always. Never not.
That's the worst. Ferrari is resisting calls to accelerate their electric vehicle program, saying that internal combustion engines are an important part of their heritage. Also part of their heritage, smoking cigarettes, insulating with asbestos, and vacationing in Chernobyl.
All that and more, a lot more on this edition of The Clean Energy Show.
All right, so I want to start with the hat because I'm wearing a hat today, which I don't normally do.
Yep.
The unofficial hockey team of the Clean Energy Show podcast is the Seattle Kracken. They started around the same time we started the podcast.
That's right.
And I like their logo, so I bought the hat. And also, too, they have 3 players from Saskatchewan, which is where James and I are from.
That's right.
But bad news is they got eliminated last night from the NHL playoffs in Game 7, so that was too bad.
Brian, I was frantically looking for clips of you talking about the Moose Jaw power plant that got approved. I'll talk about that later. But it's almost impossible to find clips. We have a lot of shows. It's what, 163? That's 163 hours of material.
Yes, and I'm not even done talking about the hat.
Well, neither am I, because I have a flashback, because I found a clip of you talking about the hat in July 28th, 2021.
Oh, and I got a Seattle Kracken hat, which we ended up talking about a lot on the podcast. And
why wouldn't I?
have to say, I get almost as many comments about my Seattle Kracken hat as I do about driving the Tesla around.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. And my kid and I were watching hockey this year for lack of anything better to do. And he's always asking me, is Brian a Kraken fan? I need to know. Well, now we're finding out if he's has more than just a hat.
Well, I have to say, I am kind of a fair weather hockey fan. I don't really pay attention to it like I used to, but, Seattle was sort of reaching fairly far into the playoffs, so I was starting to pay attention again, and they still have, 3 players from Saskatchewan. They had 4 when the franchise started.
Right.
They're down to 3. One's from Regina, one's from Carlisle, which is out where I have my cottage. But now, since the Seattle Kraken are now out of the playoffs, I'm going to take off my hat. I'm going to switch hats, and I'm going to move to...
Oh, my goodness.
My Clean Energy Show hat.
Tilt your head down for me. The audience can see it, but I can't. How is it?
Yes.
Hold it up for me. I want to see how the logo turned out.
To the audio version of the podcast, it's a very, very sexy hat.
Made sexier by the one and only Brian Stockton. Can I see it? Can I have a good look at it to your laptop camera?
Oh, yeah, the laptop camera's down
Stick
here.
Your head in. I can't quite. What do you think of it?
I feel like it's awesome. I think it's great. You did a fantastic job designing this logo. I think it looks great on hats.
I wasn't sure it would work because it's stitching,
Yes,
it's embroidered.
It is embroidered, but I can tell you it does work. Like the word "the" is clearly legible. It all works.
I am going to order one then. How's the fit and finish?
Fit is perfect. We got a blue one and a black one.
Oh.
They seem to actually fit slightly differently for some reason, but...
What's the bigger of the two? I need to know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're the same size, but one of them had a different curve on the brim, which I thought was strange. But
maybe the dye.
But anyway, we have merch. We got hats. We got T-shirts. Was there a mug too? I think we got a mug.
There's a mug. That's the cheapest. The hat's the most expensive, of course, because it's embroidered and it's a hat.
Yeah.
But there are T-shirts.
Yeah. So please check out the merch.
I'm going to order them now myself and pay the same thing everybody else does. We still have it up for no profit. It doesn't mean that it's not expensive because, when you order one of a kind things and have them custom made for individual orders, it's not the cheapest. I mean, we could order 1,000 T-shirts, but then how do we get them to our listeners that are in every corner of the planet? I guess they could send in, we could mail them, but that'd be no fun. The whole point is to have somebody else mail them. right?
Yeah.
So we don't have the extra burden. Well, that's interesting. Good.
Yeah.
Well, it's quite a ceremonial moment, switching from the Kraken hat to the Clean Energy Show hat until the playoffs next year, no doubt.
No doubt. So the other update, so the heat pump, I'm getting an air source heat pump put in my house. I'm going to replace the natural gas furnace. And there's been some progress. So we have the outside unit has been delivered. It's sitting out in my backyard. It's a very large, impressive looking thing. Looks kind of like an outside air conditioner unit, but, a little bigger, kind of beefier. It looks great. But the thing that happened was, so I'm here broadcasting from my bomb shelter studio like I do every week. This is a room in my basement that was custom built as a fallout shelter when this house was built in 1962. But, about a dozen years ago, we kind of finished it off in here. We spray foamed it. We put up drywall, put up some sound baffling, turned it into an excellent, sound recording and mixing studio. So, but the heat pump pipe has to run through the bomb shelter because of just the shape of my house. So there's an inside unit and an outside unit. The inside unit's going in the furnace room, which is kind of back behind me. So they determined that really the only way to do this was to basically go through the back of the bomb shelter behind me here, drill out the wall, to hook up the pipe to the outside unit. So the guy asked me, because I told him, this is a bomb shelter, so he's going to drill the hole. And he said, oh, okay, well, what is the wall like? Is this going to be difficult?
Uh-oh.
And I was trying to remember back because we drywalled it over a dozen years ago. And these other walls, the inside walls, are cindercrete instead of drywall. But I hadn't remembered, I didn't think there was cindercrete on the outside walls. So I told him, no, it's just the foundation of the house. I don't think there's any cindercrete there. So the guy starts drilling, but of course, no, there's absolutely an extra layer of cindercrete blocks in the foundation. So there's drywall and then spray foam and then cindercrete and then the foundation of the house. So, he managed to get a single sort of drill hole through just to check the distance, but he had to go buy another drill bit. And he hasn't been back because he needs a longer sort of, needs to drill a hole about this big.
It has to come from Albuquerque.
So he has to buy a special drill to get through the rest of the foundation. So anyway, it is progressing. The inside unit hasn't been delivered yet. That's coming next week.
That's kind of funny to think that your bomb shelter is like the longest. There's extra bomb shelter in case the house blows up, as if they target the house and the bomb shelter would still be standing.
Yeah, and that wall that he's drilling through, that faces south, and south is North Dakota, where a lot of the nuclear installations are in the U.S. So, if a blast is coming, it's probably going to come from that direction. So it makes sense that there was extra cindercrete there.
Hopefully while you're recording the podcast, so you're safe. I'll be blown away, but you'll know what happened a few seconds later.
One more thing, I've been forgetting to do this for almost an entire year, but last summer you stayed at my cottage again, and you left me a lovely gift, and I've been forgetting to thank you for it for almost a year now. You left me some cycling gloves. See, I'm looking at your face. You don't even remember what you left me.
I It took a second. I actually remember before you told me, though. I did remember before you told me.
So, thank you very much. I was in desperate need of some cycling gloves, and they're awesome. So
that's good. It's kind of a little bit scary thing to buy as a gift because you don't know if they're going to fit or if somebody
they
will
fit
like
great.
It. So that's good. Speaking of your heat pump, I saw a tweet from someone who said that they found an image from a newspaper when they were retrofitting their pre-1940s home. And the newspaper's from 1948 when the homeowner in the picture of this newspaper was showing off his heat pump in Vancouver, Canada. And he says, I often use it to show that heat pumps are not new. So there's this article in this very tinged orange colored newspaper from a long time ago from, 70 years ago. Hard to believe, but they're not new, Brad. They're not new.
And the caption, house warmer is a fridge too, and magic heat pump has free fuel. So I don't know if that's exactly true, but it is starting to get hot here in Canada, Western Canada. It's going to be about plus 30 today. So I'm looking forward to using the air conditioner. And then the other thing was, too, there was an article in the paper recently about, the air quality around the world is generally getting better. I don't know if you saw this, but But the air quality here in Western Canada is actually getting worse, and it's because of all the forest fires that we've had.
And we literally have a plume of northern Alberta forest fires and northern Saskatchewan blowing towards us as the weather shifts to a northerly wind.
No, and we've been, so far this year, we haven't got much of it, but
it's not normal, Brian, to have any this time of year. It's a mid-July, August thing, not now. I mean, Fort McMurray was 2016 when that town of 100,000 plus was evacuated from fires, and a lot of people didn't do well.
But this smoke already has apparently made it out to the east coast of Canada, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, one of the things I'm looking forward to with the heat pump, of course, we're going to get air conditioning, central air for the first time. But I think being able to keep the windows closed when there's forest fire smoke in the air is going to be like the main benefit of it. It's just because it's terrible to have to breathe that smoke indoors when you have to keep the windows open all the time to keep it cool.
So yesterday we had a moderately warm day. And the night before, though, my son couldn't sleep and he was complaining why I didn't turn on the air conditioner. And he had his door closed and I fell asleep without turning on the furnace fan. We have a DC motor on our furnace. Sure. So the installer wanted me to keep it on all the time, but I've decided that I'm not going to do that. But it does cool the house. And it does, it draws in some air from the crawl space, I think, or somewhere. And it just tends to cool the house nicely and even it out, especially when you lock yourself in your rooms upstairs and it gets warm. So I just forgot to do that. And he had a miserable day yesterday because he couldn't sleep. So last night I was extra conscious about it. It was an even warmer day and I opened up all the windows. There was no wind. There's usually wind around here. Mm-hmm. And man, I live in the north tip of the city and the wind was a small wind from the south. And I swear I could smell diesel and exhaust. I don't know if I was being psychotic or what, but I swear I could smell it. And we live in a fairly modest city that's not going to have a lot of pollution or particulates, generally speaking. My big fear, though, Brian, is when the wind from the refinery shifts and then I get a whiff of that because I don't want to breathe that. I know for a fact now that that's dangerous crap and I shouldn't be breathing it.
And the forest fire smoke as well has dangerous stuff in it.
So that's good. Why can't it flood Calgary, the head offices of the oil companies in Calgary, and just sit there? Instead of the rest of Canada who are trying to do something. Not us, not our province. I'll get to that in a second. Davidson superchargers for non-Tesla vehicles are online. The magical day came a few days ago, and I peed myself. I was so happy. Yeah. Because it's a big deal there's Tesla chargers there halfway between our two major cities here where we live. But it gets cold. Occasionally there's a nasty headwind, 50, 70 kilometers an hour. As you know, you counter them all the time with your Model 3. And you need that supercharger. And it's just I hope to not ever use it. I mean, I'm going to stop there and support the hell out of the Co-op gas station. I bought 2 memberships for them. It's a Co-op, different than the Co-op we have here. So I went, and I'm not going to use it, but I gave them the money. I bought 2 memberships, one for my son, which he was happy about. Because he travels back and forth between the two cities. He doesn't have an electric car, but I mean, he can stop in. He still feels guilty about stopping in at the other place, the racist place, which I won't mention, that won't put up EV chargers. The mall there. Son gave them his money, but he won't be doing that again, he says. So we'll see. I'm just thrilled about them. There's only 2, but they're finally open. And the good people of that co-op did. You remember when we made them a commercial?
Yeah.
I made them a commercial. Here's the commercial, just a bit of it. Why pee anywhere else? The Riverbend Co-op in Davidson. More than a gas bar, it's a heavenly oasis on the long road home. This commercial has not been approved by Riverbend Co-op. Flow charges coming early 2023. Not responsible for ice cream drips on your full leather seats. That was before Christmas.
Yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday.
I'm so happy. I almost drove up, Brian. It's an hour and a half. Someone else in the EV community did just that. Because that's how happy we are to have this black hole in our, I mean, it really opens the door for a lot of things now where we live.
And you will need it, I think, based on the range of your car. I don't think we can, it's only 250 kilometers to Saskatoon, but I don't know, it'd be awfully tight to do that with your car.
In the summertime?
It is with mine.
In the summertime?
Even summertime, yeah.
Because I did tests, man. I did tests, and I didn't go all the way, but I drove for half an hour, and the fuel consumption I was getting was, enough for me to have only 3/4 of the stuff used. I
Well,
was driving slowly though, 100
you-
and 110.
you'll have to
kilometers.
make a trip then just to sort of prove it out.
Damn
But
it! Now I have to do it.
yeah.
Except I can't be with the headwind. I know whenever I do it, it'll be with the headwind, and that'll screw everything up.
Yeah.
But I've got it figured out anyway. I've got, I'll just slow down till I can make it.
Yeah.
And I'll
that's what
check
you
to see if
do.
the chargers are online, something you got to do nowadays.
Yeah.
And by the
If
way,
your range is getting tight, you can slow down and that helps.
there are 100 kilowatt chargers, which is twice what my car can take, but less than what most other cars can take. So it would be nice if it did, well, it'd be really nice if it was 350. It was future proof and it could do the cars that can go up that high. What can go up that high? Porsche? Almost that high?
Porsche, maybe possibly the Hyundais. I can't quite remember, but
Okay.
yeah. So speaking of commercials that nobody asked you to make, this came out online just today, and I thought it was pretty funny, and I wanted to share it. This is a commercial made by. It's basically a commercial for the government programs that are happening now in the U.S. from the Inflation Reduction
This is a
Act.
real commercial?
No, I mean, it's a real commercial, but it wasn't paid for by the government.
Oh, who paid for it? Like a concerned group?
Yes, exactly. So it's Yellow Dot Studios, which is a nonprofit founded by Adam McKay, who's the Academy Award-winning writer, director, producer of a lot of movies like The Big Short, Anchorman, Step Brothers, Talladega Nights, and the one that I dislike called Don't Look Up, which is sort of a environmental catastrophe movie. Yeah, the idea was that, the government never makes like fun or interesting commercials, but they care about the climate. So they thought, hey, this would be fun. Let's make a commercial for the government without them asking us to. So it's really about their the website, the American website, Rewiring America. So that's where you can go, rewiringamerica.org, to find more information about these programs that are available from the Inflation Reduction Act. So it stars Casey Wilson and June Diane Raphael, and it's called IRA Kitchen. If you want to look for it, it's just a couple of minutes long. It's pretty funny, but we have a clip.
I thought that Inflation Reduction Act was bullshit, like everything else in DC.
A lot of it is, but the tax breaks are real and they're big. Now, I don't know how they got it through that sewer dump they call Congress.
Settle down, kids.
They're having fun.
Okay, but I bet there's a ton of red tape, right?
No, you can get money back from installation. Solar panels, heating pumps, an electric car. All I know is you save a ton of money and you get to piss off the gross oil executive.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
What's going on in that commercial visually?
Yeah, those were spit takes, the sound there that I thought it would be obvious, but no, just hearing the audio, it's not. But yeah, those are spit takes.
Oh, cool. Where did you find that?
It showed up on Twitter, and I went down to the YouTube page and found it. Just came out this morning.
Okay, well, there you go. That's funny.
Yeah.
We are other people who do funny with our podcasts. And
Yeah.
clean
Well,
energy stuff.
we should make more fake commercials. I think this is a great way to do activism because it's a kind of commercial, and that they call DC bullshit right in the ad, which is something the government could never actually do if they were making their own commercial. So yeah, why not do it that way? Because it's more fun.
Brian, for once, I'm not wearing a cap this week because I got a haircut. And I had my hair artiste look it up on the computer, and the last time I had a haircut, it was not good. It was shameful. It was December 2021. So that's a long stretch.
Wow, that's a long stretch.
Yeah. And, I don't have a full head of hair. I've got a receding hairline and a bald spot, and I start to look like a serial killer when it gets that
Were you
long.
at least hacking bits off with some garden shears or something?
No. In the pandemic, I had my daughter do that, and she did a admirably good job for someone who's never done it before. Watched a couple of YouTube videos and went at it. But yeah, my partner also didn't want that to happen again. So I got a haircut for her for Mother's Day. Best Mother's Day present I could get. But one of the reasons I'm not crazy about going to my hairstylist, he's a friend of mine. Been going to him for 30 years. The day John Candy died, I went and shot a comedy video with him, and that's where I met him. Then he sponsored my TV show, so I got free haircuts for the rest of the 90s. And, I did all kinds of things. I've been in hair shows and doing crazy hairdos and things like that. And, he was a good enough guy. I wouldn't call him somebody I'd hang around with, but we were friendly enough and had good conversations. And that's why, I always kept going to him because I can talk to him. I'm not, this other guy that I've gone to is very awkward and doesn't talk at all. And I think, should I be talking? Should I be making conversation?
Oh, I hate the chit chat of something like that. Yeah.
It's hard. It's challenging. You need a good conversationalist to get a haircut when you're a guy in middle age. So he's kind of always been a little weird about things he says, and he's smart but not smart, and has, doesn't read books. He reads the internet, and well, it's just the conspiracy thing has gotten worse to the point where I said, I can't go back. And I think he knows it because I snapped at him. He was saying something about pronouns, which is, of course, against trans people, and he's always been kind of anti-politically correct. But he thought that 15-minute cities, have you heard about 15-minute cities?
Yes, and I've heard that a lot of people are upset about this.
This is ridiculous. This is absolutely something that some guy in a basement conjured up to be a problem that's not a problem. And it's got to the point where he thinks that our city is a 15-minute city, and that's the way it's going to be, and we're not going to be allowed to leave our neighborhoods, which is ridiculous. A 15-minute city is a city smartly designed. This is something my kid wants to do if he can get into it, is urban planning, to have sort of a base of work in that part of the city. We've done it here with a new community called Harbor Landing. I mean, it's not, I don't know how many people work there, not everyone, and they're allowed to leave. It just means planning in a way where you don't have to travel all the time. You can go to something within 15 minutes. We're kind of already that in the first place. We're not that big of a city.
Yeah, so that most of the stuff you need in your life is within 15 minutes of your home. Great idea.
So I asked him, do you think our mayor is a communist? And because he had a brother who was in city council, and I don't know how he can think these things. I don't know how any intelligent person can think these things. So it concerns me. He's not a lunatic. How do everyday people come to these radicalizations? I know for him it was YouTube.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then he says, there's not enough minerals in the world for the energy transition. You know that, right? That's when I snapped. I didn't snap at the trans people. I snapped at that.
Apologies to trans people.
Very much so. Well, it was leading up. And, I just threw a bunch of facts at him and just totally eviscerated his ridiculous thoughts that he had no idea about. You could look this stuff up. You don't have to just say, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, and then just go on in your life from there thinking that because you want to think that. Look the frickin' thing up. Get multiple sources and credible sources.
And I will add that you and I live in basically opposite ends of the city, and I'm pretty certain I could make it to your house in 15 minutes.
Oh, remember when I was doing things for you at the university for various reasons? It's on the opposite end of town. You know how long it took? I got there in 6 minutes to the parking lot once.
Because there's a sort of an expressway right there.
Yeah, between those 2 points. And it was ridiculous. I was running late and I got there in 6 minutes. So it was the middle of the day. Wasn't a lot of traffic, but still, I mean, there's not much to complain about. But, a couple of weeks ago, there's a program on our national news called At Issue on CBC National News where they have some columnists come on, and they're well known now because they've been around for a while. And Andrew Coyne is on the other side of the political spectrum than me. Not that far away, but, we're not, that opposite, but he's the opposite. So I'd like voices on the right that are reasonable and aren't conspiracy laden and stupid. I want to hear a contrarian point of view because I know that those inevitably are going to make some good points. And I want to know that I'm not just in my own rabbit hole of ideas in my own bubble.
Well, maybe Andrew Coyne will cut your hair.
Maybe he will. Maybe I can have conversations with him. But the fact is, this Volkswagen plant is getting a lot of money from the government of Canada in Ontario to make batteries. And he's dead set against it. And I just listen to the clip and see if you sense anything odd.
What should Canadians be wondering and asking when they see this kind of deal announced?
Well, the government is betting the farm, first of all, on a future technology that may or may not be the technology of the future. There's a lot of questions about which kinds of battery technology are going to be the winners in the future, and nobody really knows at this point, but the government seems to think it knows. it's betting a vast amount of money, not just on that, but on the proposition that that industry is so all important that other industries must sacrifice labor and capital to keep it in business.
Now, I have some questions about all the billions they're putting towards it. It does make me a little bit uncomfortable. There's probably a lot of things that I don't know, but if there are, they haven't communicated them. I would like them to communicate them. But then when I talk to people, nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows the things that you and I talk about on our show. Generally speaking, they have no idea. They hear things. They think the government's going to force us to buy EVs. Government's going to force us to live in one part of the city and never leave. That's the things they hear. They don't really know the freaking reality of what's going on in the world. The world is trying to address climate change the best they can. They're not, and oil is standing in the way. It's what, are we not going to build battery plants because we don't know what the final battery is going to be? No, we're going to build different plants. We're going to tweak the plants. We're going to, it's going to continue because we have to build them now.
And the tone has been set by the U.S., which passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is literally like billions or trillions of dollars towards this kind of thing. And Canada is a much smaller, 1/10 the size of the U.S. We're a very small neighbor and we're completely intertwined. And so, the U.S. sets the tone for a lot of what we do here in Canada. So to just ignore that and not spend any money on this stuff would be bizarre in itself.
Yeah, we're in a hard place because the U.S. was sucking away all of our investment money to go down there. Yeah. And they needed to do something. And I do understand that it was hard decision, but now Stellantis has said, hey, now they're holding the government, hostage, saying we want Volkswagen money. We're stopping their construction.
That's right, because Stellantis had started some projects already, and now they're going. Yeah, I mean, you're between a rock and a hard place. It's going to be very difficult for them as a government, to navigate. Even if the government was against all this, even if it was a conservative government that was against all this, they might even be doing this because you kind of got to keep up with the Americans.
Now, Brian, you're probably asking, why, James, are you mad today? Well, earlier this month, the Saskatchewan government, where we live, announced that the federal government, which we were just talking about, who is trying to address climate change, they have a carbon tax and other programs, including an EV rebate. They're not going to meet their goals for net zero emissions by 2035 because that, Brian, as you damn well know, is the world's goals. It's not Justin Trudeau's, something he pulled out of his fancy pants. It was the world needs to decarbonize the grids by 2035 or we're all effed.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
You are not wrong.
But Scott Moe says, no, we're a special case scenario. This province that has the best wind capacity in Canada, the best solar capacity in Canada, we just can't decarbonize our grid. This is so frustrating because we told them so many times on this very podcast. This very podcast, 2 years ago, we started talking about the natural gas plant that they were building over in Moose Jaw.
Yeah, it might have even been longer than 2 years.
It might have been right at the beginning of our podcast 3 years ago. I mean, they were building a stranded asset and you said so. Yeah. I mean, it was frustrating to us. And now he's saying, well, we didn't know the climate was an issue. What's the Paris Accord? The oil industry wouldn't let us read it. Come on. And now they're saying electricity prices are going to go up because of decisions they damn well knew they were making. Because it will become a stranded asset. You build it now, it opens next year and closes in 10 years. Well, yeah, that's on you, jackass. You stupid Scott Moe. You jackwagon you, which the previous premier invented that word, so I'm going to use it on the new premier. Jackwagon. Feel free, audience, to use that at will. Yeah, so he's a real jackwagon. And he's in bed with the oil industry, and he's coddling to them. And it's not going to save the oil industry. He just wants to not, do anything that insults them. It's not like what he does is going to change the world oil market. Yeah.
And it's a wedge issue and they can score points by just complaining about what the federal government is doing. It's a common strategy in politics, but you would think that with the world's climate at stake that they might put that aside for 20 minutes and do something that will actually save them money.
It will save them money. You said back then, and you've said it several times since on the show, and I can't find it because we have too many shows. I have too short a lifespan, or too short of a daylight waking hours for me. So I couldn't do it. I couldn't find it, but it's been said many times. Our listeners can back us up. Our longtime listeners. It's an example of, that's true for the rest of the world. The climate needs fossil fuels gone as fast as humanly possible, not delayed, not captured, not e-fuels, not renewable natural gas or any of the jargon they use to make more fossil fuels. It has to go. It has to go now. And every day matters. So screw them.
Yeah.
And telling us that your electricity bill is going to go up. Well, okay, Mr. Premier, we don't want that. Well, fudge you, because the sun has not billed me or you, Brian, for the protons it has rained on our roofs for the last 5-6 years. Because once you build it, it's free, or at least, nominal cost, like 1 or 2 people to run a giant solar farm. So piss off.
And, I'm not much of an activist, so, there wasn't much I could think to do other than complain about it here on the podcast. But if we could go back in time, we've covered many stories about lawsuits, citizens suing government. And that's probably what we should have done 3 years ago when they announced this. We
should have sued their ass.
Yeah, $750 million natural gas plant, which I think is not even finished being built yet, right?
No.
They started it a couple of years ago, $750 million. We should have sued them back then for wasting taxpayer money or something, whatever the strategy is in court.
Is that a blue hat or a black hat?
This is the blue one.
Okay. Which do you like better?
I like the blue one better.
Okay, good to know. Should I buy the blue one?
Yes.
Okay, I'll buy the blue one.
Honda. This is going to sound like more complaining, I'm afraid. This is going to be a nasty complaining episode. But so you remember not that long ago, Toyota came out with their first full-fledged electric vehicle.
BZ4...
Yes.
Something.
BZ4X for our American listeners and BZ4X for everybody else.
Or just BS to the world.
Which was just sort of a terrible name, but,
intentionally so.
People on the internet started calling it the Buzzforks, which at least is something. Like it's still a terrible name, but at least it's something to call it, because calling it the BZ4X is a mouthful that you really don't want to do. But anyway, so Honda is getting in on the same game. And it's really started to feel like they are absolutely doing this on purpose, that they do not want people to buy these cars. The new Honda is called the NY1. So that's E:, capital N, small y, digit 1. And that is the name of the electric car that Honda is going to try and sell to the public.
Ask for it by name, if you can.
And there's not even, I tried to think of, like, could we turn that into Buzzforks or something? No, there's nothing.
It's a like big FU is what it is, Brian. It's a big FU to the world. Thank you, Japanese automakers. Do better.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. I mean, NY, so that makes me think of New York. Could you call it the New York one? But that doesn't really make sense. It's really bizarre, and it's really, it's sad, frankly.
Honda, you're sad. You understand me? You're sad.
And I want to point out here that Ford, in contrast, it makes you realize, Ford actually wants to sell their electric vehicles, because what did they choose? They've got the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Mustang is a very popular brand.
F-150.
People want to own a Mustang. And then they've got the F-150 Lightning, the F-150, their biggest selling vehicle.
And you know what?
You look at
they are selling. It is working.
And they are selling. They can't make them fast enough. It's an indication Ford actually wants to sell electric vehicles, but I don't think Honda or Toyota actually wants to sell them.
Toyota, you could bite my ass.
They're just designed to fail, and then, I don't know, they're hoping for maybe a bailout evenly from the Japanese
screw
government.
you.
I don't know.
Come on, people. Don't be so bloody ignorant. You're getting, you're getting pushed out by the world, by China. China's going to eat your lunch.
James, you got to watch your blood pressure, man.
Yeah, I do. Just give myself a little shock there. That's,
very good.
That's much better. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, well, so there is a company, Brian, who's invented solar automated robots. Automated robots that build huge solar farms TerraFab is an automated digital system featuring robots that build utility-scale solar farms, and its creators claim it's able to double installation productivity and yet reduce costs. I would expect them to reduce costs. This is from Electrek. And Berkeley, California-based TerraBase Energy's TerraFab system features solar panel installation robots that can operate 24/7, as expected, on an automated assembly line on the farm's site. Yeah, I just thought of AI, and this is how AI will do it when they take over humanity.
Once they can power themselves, they
Yeah. But we need to build a lot of solar, except where we live, because we want to burn natural gas, and the hell with the planet, as forest fires decimate the north as we speak. The system uses robotic arms that lift and connect solar panels to trackers. Now, I don't know if this will be cost effective. I don't know if this will be the new thing, but it's at least possible, and it's interesting to just mention on the show.
Yeah. So moving on to Ferrari, keep your defibrillator standing by.
All right.
It's a bit of another complaining story here, but Ferrari has said that they are basically going to slow down their electric vehicle program. And I mention this mostly because we were talking about the EU, the European Union, and, they had, fuel and climate bills ready to go, which were suddenly kind of derailed at the last minute with people arguing for e-fuels or, biofuels, or making some allowances that, vehicles didn't have to go 100% electric, that there would be still some window of opportunity to keep using fossil fuels in cars a little bit longer. So, and at the time on the podcast, I said, well, it's kind of a moot point, because by the time 2035 rolls around, nobody's going to be wanting to make combustion cars anyway. Anyway, it turns out Ferrari wants to. It's maybe not even all that important, because obviously they just
don't sell a lot.
They don't sell a lot, and these are supercars that
I'm not gonna cry if a few high-end automakers want to make combustion vehicles and some hobbyists want to use and here, because it will be a nostalgic thing, like people running steam engines now, right?
Yeah. And
use e-fuels, fine. Use the best you can, as long as your carbon is made up somehow.
Yeah. And and this is their argument, that there is something inherent to a combustion engine with Ferrari. I mean, those cars sound amazing if you like
Sure.
that sound of the burbling engine sound, and Ferrari probably does it better than anybody else. But this is their plan to build internal combustion engines well into the late 2030s is their plan. They are going to release their first fully electric vehicle by 2025. Which is a little late. And then they're expecting 5% of sales in 2026 to be electric, but they're already doing hybrids. So, I mean, I find it a little bit weird that they're so reluctant to do this, because
Toyota's
supercar
doing
makers,
hybrids, right? I mean, Honda's doing some hybrids. Toyota's way big on hybrids.
All of the supercar makers figured this out at least 10 years ago, that they can make their cars faster if they go hybrid. If they put in a little bit of battery, electric motor, you can just make it faster, which is what the point of these ridiculous vehicles is to make them fast. So, and this story is from Electrek. Despite several major auto markets banning the sale of new ICE vehicles, the EU recently agreed on a synthetic e-fuels provision, giving Ferrari the green light to continue building ICE vehicles into the future. So, they do have hybrid models, but they're just going to back off on any wild plans to switch to electric vehicles, which, as we all know, are faster anyway.
That's what I have to say to that. Brian, it's time for What Do You Think?
What do you think?
This is Tesla Heavy. What do you think? It's where I ask Brian what he thinks about things. Brian's a Tesla expert and a shareholder. Elon Musk says he wants to personally approve every new hire at the Tesla company. I'll ask you what you think, but here's what I think. One more. There we go.
So last year, Tesla hired roughly 30,000 people. So this is obviously impossible. So there's some context missing from this. I don't think it's really
Did he
worth
download
talking
his
about.
brain into one of the Tesla bots and then that'll just greet you at the door?
Yes, that's what AI is for.
I mean, eventually it'll be that way. Tesla starts monitoring drivers for yawns and eye blinking. What if you get something in your eye? It'll pull over.
Yeah, if you're right. You could end up blinking a lot because you're
listening to
a
very emotional ebook or audiobook, like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what is this? This is AI at work here. And I'm not sure anyone else is doing this type of work. Like there's driver monitoring systems in lots of cars, but Tesla is doing it with the camera and with, I guess, artificial intelligence that sort of interprets, all of these things. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. Why not do it?
Peter Johnson of Electric claims you can get a Rivian R1T pickup truck, all electric, of course, delivered in 2 weeks. Is demand going down for Rivian, do you think?
Yeah, that could be an issue for Rivian. They don't make a ton of vehicles, so you certainly wouldn't want demand to be slipping. And it's a fine line too, because you don't want people waiting 6 months for a vehicle or a year for a vehicle, which lots of people have. But 2 weeks is probably too short if they're, betting on, doing well.
I'm not excited about a Rivian as I used to be. I mean, eventually I hope they get their things together, but it's kind of maybe not the best value in my opinion for a truck. It's pretty expensive and it's nice. I mean, I would probably have one in my mansion if I were super rich.
Yeah. And it's got a really small bed, so it's maybe not that useful.
It's an adventure vehicle.
Mhm.
Tesla is cutting prices on supercharged in Europe by a whopping 25%. What does that tell you? Anything?
Yeah, I think it's just because basically the electricity prices have come down in Europe after spiking. So yeah, I think they're just reacting to the market and the electricity costs less, so they're passing on the savings.
All right, this has been another edition of What Do You Think?
What do you think?
We've talked in the past about offshore wind farms. This is a very big thing that's going to be a very big part of the energy mix going forward. And there was some weird story a couple of months ago. Somebody was claiming that offshore wind turbines would kill whales or something? What was that story?
Yes, the oil industry funded that opposition group. Oil industry in Texas.
We can't put up wind turbines offshore because it'll kill.
Well, there was some dead whales, but the dead whales has been going on before they started surveying for wind, and they do want. I mean, people are saying we do want to learn more about such things, but right now there's zero evidence to say that.
Anyway, so another story here from Electrek. There's an offshore wind farm in the U.S. that is piloting the bubble curtain. Have you heard of this?
Negative. I have not heard of that.
So it is disruptive. We don't think it's killing whales, but it is disruptive to drill these holes in the ocean to put up these wind turbines. So it's not without consequence. The clean energy transition, it's not all smooth sailing. It's, 1,000 times better than digging up oil and burning it. But, there are issues along the way. I think like hydroelectricity is a good example of that. Like hydroelectricity has been giving us clean power, especially here in Canada, for decades and decades. And it's been largely a wonderful technology, but that too is not without its environmental impacts. People and wildlife get affected by these, hydroelectric dams and so forth. So that's, it's not ideal, but it's probably worth the trade-off. Maybe not going forward, building new hydroelectric. But so, the trade-off with building these offshore wind farms is that it can be a problem. It's extremely noisy when foundation structures such as monopiles or jacket foundations are driven into the seabed using large hydraulic hammers. The noise and vibrations created during that foundation work can be harmful to marine life, particularly to fish and marine mammals such as dolphins and whales. So, what do you think they're doing about this, James?
It sounds like a curtain wrapped around the install site with air bubbles, although the air would force it to the surface. So I'm trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, the curtain is made entirely of bubbles. So they just make a circular tube, basically. They put that on the floor of the ocean around where they're digging, and they pump air into it. So there's a curtain of bubbles that rises to the surface. And this cushions all of those sounds of the, hydraulic hammers pumping along. So I just thought that was cool.
I assume they studied it beforehand. or this is
Yeah,
part of the study?
they're giving it a bit of a test run here offshore in the U.S., off Massachusetts, I think. Yeah. So it sounds like it's better than nothing, that this does help to,
Well, I'm
take
sure
down
it
the
is better
negative.
than nothing. If that is one of the major issues, is the noise during construction, then yeah, let's get that bubble curtain going.
Yeah, and I've heard that too about whales, that they're even just the noise of like cargo ships and stuff can interfere with whales. So,
Oh, yeah.
noise in the ocean is it's a thing.
All right, Brian, let's get to the tweet of the week. This is from National Environmental Correspondent for CBS News, David Schechter. He tweets, oil and gas revenue is the biggest reasons the University of Texas system is the wealthiest public university in America. Number 2 is Texas A&M, which also gets a cut of oil royalties. Where from? Oil and gas on the properties. Well, $42.7 billion to the University of Texas.
Wow.
I think the university in Saskatchewan, up here north, just started a controversial $2 billion fundraising program, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's a lot of money. And one of the things they're going to do is build a new engineering building, because my son complains that the engineering building is older than time. And, everywhere else has a new building. So, yeah, $42 billion from oil and gas, because they actually have stuff on the property. And Texas A&M gets half that, 18.2. Can you imagine? I mean, you'd still be teaching if we had oil on your university that you worked at.
No, I think there is oil funding for my old university. I think probably lots of universities.
Lots of research grants and things like that.
Yeah, and like things like, how to get oil from the oil sands. That was all research that started at universities back in the 70s.
NASA climate scientist who was arrested for defending the Earth, he says on his Twitter profile, Dr. Peter Kalmas, is another tweet that I wanted to highlight this week. This is a few personal notes. I was just at a NASA team meeting for 3 days in Washington, D.C. The scientific findings are so effed up. Experts on tropical rainforests told me privately that they think the Amazon has already passed its tipping point. So he says, let that sink in. The world needs to know. So we're letting the world know. It's lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
25% of new California vehicles have plugs. Yes, it should be higher, but hey, 1 in 4 ain't bad. A climate denier is being called to testify in Montana against litigation brought by youth who are not happy about climate and what Montana is doing about it. UK company Backpedal, this is interesting, is using GPS and on-the-ground teams to stop e-bike theft. So not only do they put a GPS tracker that can't be removed from your e-bike, but they've got a bunch of guys and a van that'll go around and get it back for you. They have a 90% success rate.
Nice.
Oh, it's a CS fast fact from the International Energy Agency. Today's global energy system requires over 25 billion tons of mass-based resources a year to operate. The majority of them, of course, fossil fuels. In our net zero pathway, the energy system in 2050 uses only half as much resources and far less fossil fuels. So people say, oh, we're going to have to mine the hell out of the world to reach net zero. Well, no.
Yeah. We're already mining the hell out of the world, and anything else will be less.
UK hits a major clean energy milestone. 1 trillion kilowatt hours of electricity generated from renewable energy sources, enough to power the UK for 12 years.
And they even do solar in the UK despite the cloudy weather.
Imagine if they did it here in sunny Saskatchewan, Canada. 82% of board members at the largest 6 banks are climate conflicted. And climate conflicted makes me angry, that word. The climate thing, I don't know. Maybe it's a thing. Maybe it's not a thing. Maybe the scientists are right. Maybe I'm right. And shouldn't be there according to the organization DeSmog. So keep going after the banks, people. Move your mortgages. Ask them questions. Write them letters. The UK's changing energy mix has seen the output from nuclear energy fall by around a third in the past decade due to aging reactors. So that mix is actually getting less. During power outages, each Skagoro battery swapping station can keep running for over 2.5 days on backup power, something I didn't know because we've been talking a lot about them and they're spreading around the world.
Yeah, these are those scooters in Asia that have swappable batteries, and the battery stations themselves are these quite amazing things that, they got a lot of batteries so they can power themselves.
The power system is not terribly reliable in some parts where these things two-wheelers are popular. Therefore, you won't be out of gas. You won't be out of energy when you won't be caught stranded or anything. They'll still be able to power the charging of the batteries and keep going. From Bailout Watch, a CEO pay at the 10 biggest U.S.-based oil and gas companies rose 4% from 2021 to 2022. Worker pay, by contrast, dipped 1% in the same period. So, workers are getting less in oil and gas, and CEOs are raking in as much as they can before it all goes away. From a study published in Science of the Total Environment, they found that subways have reduced population-related CO2 emissions by 50% for the 192 cities studied, and about 11% globally. Subways measured to be a good thing, Brian, for population-based emissions.
Excellent mass transit is always good.
UK wind delivered more electricity than gas for the first time for an entire quarter in the first quarter of 2024. So bye-bye gas. This was a big one here in Canada. Toronto City Council has voted 18-7 to end single-family only exclusionary zoning, which means there's some places in Toronto, as we say in Canada, or Toronto as it's known to the world, where you have to have only single-family houses zoned for that. But now they're saying you can't do that no more, allowing for duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes in all residential areas of the city. And they became the largest city in North America to do so. What do you think of that, Brian? You used to live there, and housing is always an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I never lived way out in the burbs like that, but that's sprawl is a huge problem in a lot of places, and we need to keep the density up. And having massive tracts of lands with single-family homes is a terrible, terrible idea.
Yeah, my kid in university, I'm always trying to ask him, what's on the minds of your peers. And housing is the big one. They're mad that you and I own homes, and we were mad that our parents owned homes and a cottage and did more things with their high school education than we could have. But it is bad, and it is one of the major things that he's always talking about. And he thinks I don't care. I do care, but solutions are few and far between. I don't know.
Well, it is one of the things that if interest rates stay high, it should bring the price of houses down, but it's interest rates getting lower would be better for the economy generally, and it's hard to say.
And finally this week we have an oil ban.
Oil ban.
The Danish capital Copenhagen is looking to ban all cars with combustion engines from the city by 2030. On Friday, all local governing parties agreed on a resolution to pave the way. Good for you, Copenhagen.
That is fantastic news because I once got into a car accident in Copenhagen.
Story I didn't know. Brian, that's our show for this week, if you haven't figured that out. Please take the time to contact us. What's our email? Write it down now. cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. All that information is in your show notes, including where to buy a sexy Clean Energy Show hat in blue or black or whatever color you choose. I don't recommend any other colors, but or a mug, or whatever you like. Lots of t-shirts. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel for special features if you'd like to have a look at us. And if you're new to the show, as we ask everyone every week, subscribe on your podcast app, because we do this every week, and you'll get new episodes delivered for free to your app. I can't wait to do it again next week, Brian.
See you next week.